for this next transition, it's really, you got to spend money to make money as a business owner.
Welcome to the Insurance Refocused podcast, where we're highlighting real agent stories and how they are innovating to respond to the changes and challenges happening in the independent insurance industry. My name's Lindsay, and I can't wait to introduce you to my amazing co-host, who just so happens to be my mom, Carey Wallace. Mom, how you doing today?
I'm having a fantastic day, Lindsay. I hope you're having a good day too.
I am. Thank you. The weather's, I wanted to say unseasonably cold, but then I just remembered it's January and it actually is normally cold, but it's like 35 degrees outside down here in Charleston, which is way too cold for my blood, but we're staying warm. We're getting through it.
Absolutely. All I can tell you is the sun is shining and it's actually causing a thing here, which, I mean, listen, first world problems, because there's lots of people in the world that are like, yeah, I feel real bad for you that you have a sunshiny day in January, right? So whatever. Well, I'm super excited today, Lindsay, because we get to have one of my favorite people, one of my favorite clients that I got to work with, Jordan Piland of Lewis and Wallace Associates is joining us, and I could not be happier. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's certainly an honor. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, before we jump into your background, I thought it might be fun to do a little trivia question and test your all's knowledge of maybe some financial and M&A, whatever, because that's what we do. I mean, that's what I do at Agency Focus. And we're going to dig into some M&A conversations on this podcast. So why not start with a little trivia questions? You guys game?
Down. I'm ready.
Awesome. I love it. Okay. So I know neither of you are like highly financial people. I get that. But what financial statement is primarily used to review the allocation of resources and categorize expenses into industry benchmarks to know how you compare to other agencies? Which one of the financial statements? I'm going to give you multiple choice here. I'm not going to make you come up with what the financial statements are. So is it A, the cash flow statement, B, the profit and loss statement, or C, the balance sheet? Or you could have the option of none of the above. All right, Jordan, I'm going to let you guess first. Hold on. I'm going to let Jordan guess first.
Man, I think they're all relevant, but for industry benchmarks.
Yeah. What do you think?
I'm going to go P&L. I'll go B.
Okay. He's going B. What do you think, Lindsay?
I think that I will also go B, but I do know the answer to this question. So ding, ding, ding. B is correct.
B is correct. Good. I'm glad I didn't strike out at the very beginning of the call.
No, you didn't. Jordan, there's a hilarious story that goes with this trivia question. So doing these questions is one of the things we're doing to promote Agency Focus's new online classes that we're launching on demand. And so we're running them on social media. We're running them on our website. We're doing lots of things. It's a fun time. But as part of them, I created the questions. I just looked through all of our blog posts and I pulled out things like, oh, what would be, a good question, but it's not like crazy hard, but it's a little bit interesting. And I made my mom record videos on each question. And it was the first time that she had seen them. So we're going through the questions, whatever. We get to this one. And there previously was an answer D, to which we had to change the last to be none of the above. But I did not know that the profit and loss statement also had another name, which is what, Mom?
Income statement.
And so we're going through these videos and she's like, great, you got if you guessed letter B, profit and loss statement, you'd be right. But I guess if you also guessed D, you would also be right. And I about fell out of my chair because I had no idea that those were the same thing. I just picked three things that sounded like different financial statements. Oh my God. It took us about 2 minutes to recover from that. We were just both on the floor laughing. It was so
That
funny.
Really funny.
that's a
So
good one.
if you got it wrong, you would be in good company, Jordan. That's the long and the short of it. Because the reality is, if you asked me an insurance coverage question, I would do my best, but it would be 50-50 if I would get all those things right. You know what I mean? Like
True.
we're all in our space, obviously, but it was very, very funny. So Jordan, we've known each other. I was actually thinking about this before we hopped on the call. I think I've known you for almost 6 or 7 years at this point. Like that's crazy to think that,
Yeah.
which I'm honored, but that is just something. So for those people that don't know you, let's do a brief background of what brought you to this crazy industry. And then let's dig into some things inside your agency, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So just to kind of briefly set the stage, I was kind of born in a very militaristic family. My dad's in the army, mom's very type A. So just right out of the womb, almost, I was taught to work. I mean, there was not a Saturday morning, we couldn't sleep till 8 a.m. If we did, we'd be in trouble. We'd have to get up, do our lawn work, and then we could go play. So all my friends quickly realized if they stayed at my house that I would be dragging them out of bed to come work with me, and they were like, "Hey, why don't you come spend the night with me?" So they got pretty smart pretty quick. But that really did set the stage for me and just my desire to work in general. And then when I was 12 years old, started cleaning a fitness club on the weekends. My parents would drop me off, and that led to working there a few nights a week. And then when I turned 16, my parents were like, "Hey, you can drive now. You also have to pay for anything you want to do that's fun." Well, I played every sport that I possibly could. So I'm like, well, $7 and 25 cents or whatever at the time after Uncle Sam takes your money, it didn't leave for a lot. So actually at 15, I started cutting lawns in my neighborhood. And then once I turned 16, me and a buddy kind of partnered, and all throughout the summer, we just cut grass and saved up money. And then that allowed me to kind of do what I wanted during the
Nice.
school year. But that just sparked a desire for me to work. So all through high school, we built up roughly 45 accounts. And I really wanted to keep doing that. My parents really had to force me to go to college. I'll be honest, I was not a college person, but I'm glad I went to Kennesaw State for 2 years and then transferred back to UGA in Griffin, which is an extension campus, to do business management, and started my lawn care business back up and partnered with the company. And we got to 95 accounts. I mean, we were getting into apartment complexes, and we had 2 crews running,
Yeah.
actually 3. And I loved it. And quite frankly, I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And my senior year of college, I just had this realization that, yes, I could take this approach and continue self teaching essentially, or why don't I go join a corporation that has hundreds of years of knowledge and learn from someone else? And so I applied for a few different jobs and ended up landing at IBM and joined IBM fresh out of college. And quite frankly, was still one of the best decisions I made. I mean, they really taught me a lot and poured consultative selling in us throughout sales training, which didn't know at the time, but is very applicable for the insurance world. So I kind of went into IBM thinking I'd be there for, I don't know, 5 years or so. I knew I wasn't going to try to climb the corporate ladder, but I wanted to be there for at least 3 to 5 years to say I learned something. Well, the Lord had different plans. Met my wife. Just a little fun fact, met her on December 1st of 2015, fresh out of sales school. And I knew she was the one pretty quickly. And I also knew in sales, if you leave a deal on the table, someone else can come in and close the deal. So
Heck yeah.
I was pretty determined to close the deal. And so 45 days later, I proposed and
Whoa.
we got married that July. So it was just a God thing, and the Lord aligned it very well. And so anyway, we got married pretty quickly, and then obviously I met her family. I was still meeting her aunt and uncles at the wedding. I mean, I barely knew her extended family when we got married, but I'll answer kind of how do I get into insurance? I'll be honest. To this day, I don't know exactly the moment that Tammy and I had a conversation. It was like, "Hey, join insurance." What I can tell you is, she mentioned, "Hey, why don't you consider selling on the weekends or something?" And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." Well, I knew you had to have your license. And so that was step one. So I
Mm-hmm.
went down to Macon, Georgia, after I studied just on the weekends, took the exam, got it back. And in the insurance exam, like if you pass, you pass. But if you fail, it'll tell you what you made. I made a 69 and you needed a 70.
Ooh.
Oh.
And I literally left there just like a little baby. I'm like, woe is me. Clearly, this isn't the route I should take. And by the time I pulled back in my driveway, which was like an hour drive, I was like, all right, man up. You're going to go back in 2 weeks and take it. Went back and got on the elevator. I didn't even want to look at the paper. I was just like, if I failed this thing again, and I passed. But at that moment, it almost felt like the same as when I met Chloe. Like I just knew. And so as soon as I saw I passed, I'm like, it clicked. I was like, oh, not only do I have a chance to kind of go and maybe own a business one day, didn't know at the time, but it was the passion and the believing in a product. So at IBM, I mean, I was a very passionate individual and I did believe in IBM's product, but I wasn't passionate about the product. I wasn't overly motivated and it, it kind of makes selling hard. What I quickly learned was I was very passionate about people, very passionate about customer service, and I believed in the insurance industry. And it just, like I said, it just clicked. And so shortly after that, Tammy thought I was going to do just random sales here and there. Well, within 2 weeks, I call her and I'm like, Tammy, my heart's not in. I mean, I'm not doing IBM any service. Like, I know my next step is to take a leap of faith. And I think I shocked her a little bit. She wasn't prepared for me to leave corporate world, leave IBM, and take this job. And the moment I sat down at the dinner table with Chloe, she was pregnant with, or no, we had just had our first child, and I was like, it's going to be a leap of faith. We're taking a big financial step backwards, but I want you to believe in what I am trying to accomplish. And she did. And as soon as Chloe was on the same page with me, it just, everything just felt right.
Mm.
And so that's really what drove me to insurance. I didn't know how much you could make. It really wasn't about the money. It was strictly about serving people, being a consultative seller, and joining a firm that I believed had a good foundation, believing in
Yeah.
something that was already there, that I wasn't going into a unequally yoked situation. I was going into a place in an environment that I wasn't just a number. Nothing wrong with corporate, but you are a number.
Yeah.
And here, it wasn't that way. So
So Jordan, sorry, give me a little bit of background. Did you start your agency? Do you work at a family agency? Are you a producer? Give me a little bit of like, what's your role now?
yeah, so at the time, I joined to be a producer to sell,
Yeah.
and because it's so the company I joined, it was a family business.
Okay.
My grandfather-in-law started, so they were a captive firm. And just a little side note, I did the very first thing I did was I researched captive versus independent. I at
Versus
least had enough
independent.
knowledge to look that up.
Good.
And I can tell you, and I told Tammy from day one, if they were a captive firm, which they were a year before, I probably would have never left IBM. Because again, going back to customer service, I wanted to be able to go to a client, sit down and listen, ask 100 questions if I needed to, and then come back and bring them a fitting solution. And I knew
Mm-hmm.
the independent channel would give me that opportunity. So I started out as a producer. And I mean, I'll be frank. I mean, when I decided to move over, I sat down with Tammy, who's my mother-in-law and was the owner at the time, and I told her kind of what I was trying to accomplish. She knew it wasn't going to be day one. I knew it wasn't going to be day one, but I did feel like it was the right thing to do to go in and tell her what my ultimate goal was by joining the firm. I feel like that was right. I feel like if I'd have just come in and she thought she was just hiring me and all of a sudden I threw something on her, it would have been a little, I think unfair for me to do that.
Yeah.
And so from day one, we kind of, I joined and she hired me knowing that there is a potential future for us to work together more than just an employee-employer situation.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
Okay.
you desired to be the successor, which I think is incredibly important because there's a lot of people that think that like, hey, I'm a producer, I'm a really strong producer, or I'm part of the family, or I'm whatever. But wanting that and becoming that are two very different things. And from your perspective, number one, I think anytime you're in a family run business and there's nepotism, there's multiple people that are part of a family, and there's also people on the team that are not family, gaining the trust and respect of those other people is critical. Absolutely critical. Because there is in the back of your mind, are these people there just because they're family or because they're qualified? So tell me what that journey was, moving from I want to be that to I am that. Like I am going to live that culture and I'm going to behave like the next future owner of this agency, which now you are but I'm taking you back to that part. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And I'll tell you one thing that kind of prepared me for that was, and again, it just came natural. I think the way I was raised, but every employer I worked for, the fitness club, it wasn't a ton, but I did work at a restaurant in college just to try something new. But everyone I worked for, I wanted them to know that they made the best choice by hiring me. I wanted to impress not only them, but also people who we interact with. And because I was essentially the face of the company I worked for when I had that interaction. So I always kind of worked as if I was an owner mentality. Like I worked as if if I own a business one day, I want employees to work how I'm trying to work. So I think coming into it and having that understanding, I knew that you can, like, it's one thing to say you want to be something, but you also have to prove it. And so kind of what you're saying, Carrie, is when I came in, I identified what I would consider gaps, and our gaps were producing. We had a good service team. We had a good foundation. We had high retention. We didn't have a sales team. So I identified a gap and said, okay, how can I be the most valuable today? Well, and the answer was to show up and close business and grow a book. And, we didn't have a commercial division, didn't have any carrier contacts at all. So I had to just kind of go out, shake hands, introduce myself, and slowly build a book. So that was really that was really the key, Carrie, was proving myself, like showing not only to the team, but to Tammy that, I could potentially be the next person.
So give me an idea. How long did that take, Jordan, from the point when you started to actually moving into ownership? What was that timeline? And I think, what was the evolution? So some of it, you proved yourself, and clearly it's how you're wired. It's why you got the job in the first place. It's probably why you got your wife. Like you showed up as you, right? Mm-hmm. But tell me what that timeline and process looked like, getting, moving from a producer role into thinking like an owner, behaving like an owner, and actually becoming an owner.
Yeah. So my wife would agree, and Tammy would. She knows now. I'm like a bull in a china shop. So it did go fast. And there were moments where I would say within a year and a half, I had my first conversation with Tammy of my desire to be a partner, and it scared her. The reality, and it should. No normal person is going to just have, they own a company and you got some random, son-in-law coming in and going, hey, I want a partner. It was aggressive. And I knew that going into it, but I also knew with the same breath that I had to be honest with my desire and I had to be willing for her to say no. I had to be willing to accept not now, maybe later. And initially that was the case. It was, hey, because the world will tell you, and the world did tell us that that's not a good idea. Don't hire your son-in-law. Don't partner with your son-in-law.
Sure.
And I think there can be some truth to that. You do have to be cautious. But the thing that I think made Tammy's and I's process so unique is, number one, we're both believers, and we both put our ultimate trust in the Lord. And so with that being the foundation, we both could also kind of just trust throughout prayer and process that, hey, when the time's right, it's going to happen. There's no need to force it. So a year and a half, Carrie, literally 2018 February 2018, I joined, spent a year trying to figure things out. And then I think 2 years, we actually became partners 2 years in.
Yeah.
And you're both still on board on the team?
Yeah, both still working. Yep, she's still here full time, and which I don't know if we want to get into that yet, but that transition did just happen back in August.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're going through like your first couple months or so of making like dual decisions and both having like input on major decisions then right now.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that I've been super super blessed throughout this process. I mean, Carrie would agree. I mean, Tammy's probably the nicest person you'll ever meet.
She
Um,
is.
and what made it is she allowed me to come in even though I didn't own the company and make company decisions. She
Hmm.
trusted my judgment, and we'd sit down. I go, hey, I think we should do this, or we need to hire this person, and she really did allow me to do that. And I think that's a big testimony just on her part. And what made this work was she knew that I knew that she was the owner, but she also was like, hey, you clearly have a future here, and I want to do whatever I can to support you. And so her and I have had a great
Yeah.
relationship because of that.
So, Jordan, you said two things that are really important. You said, number one, you recognize that your timeline is aggressive. Like it was absolutely aggressive. And you were willing to accept not yet, or not now, or maybe later as an answer. I think too many times that communication between successor and current owner is delayed because you're worried about how it's going to go and how it's going to change things. And if you don't get the answer that you want. So I love, love, love that you were like, I know this is crazy. Literally, I asked your daughter to marry me within 45 days of knowing them. I have a little bit of a pattern of being in a rush. Like, obviously, it's not a bad thing. Like, but at the same time, proved yourself. That's why your story is so fascinating to me, because it's not mother son, it's mother son in law. There's other family involved, and you guys have navigated communication and transferring responsibility before transferring ownership and done it pretty beautifully. I'm not saying it was perfect because nothing's ever perfect, but
Right.
I think that that's really important for people to hear, because being silent and not voicing it could have caused you to say, listen, I don't see a future here, so I'm going to go to another agency, and that would be the worst thing possible. um,
Yeah.
you know, I guess my question to you is, how did that work? Where was the balance, and what did that back and forth look like as responsibilities ebbs and flowed through that process? Like, give us an example of a decision you guys wrestled with together and how you made decisions, even though you were not the owner at the time.
Yeah. Even just small. I say small. It's not just accessing books, right? I mean, that's a big step. And that was one of
Sure.
the first things that I, quite frankly, asked for was not to have control, but I'm a kind of budget guru. I like to create budgets throughout the year, and I also like to have a plan. And so, not that nothing was done right at the beginning, I just kind of wanted to be involved in that process. And it was, I think, financials are a little bit of a strength of mine, not great, but that first conversation was hard because I kind of went in
Yeah.
and was like, hey, like to see the books, and prepare a budget for 21 or whatever year it was. And she's like, hold on a second, but that was like, I will say that was probably the hardest hurdle. We never got sideways ever throughout that. But for me, it was hard because I'm like, oh, I really want to see it. And she's like, let's hold on a second. Um,
Yeah.
but again, I think what helped every potential, what you could say, tensious situation was resolved by just more communication. Um,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
literally communicated a lot. And then I'll say another thing when we were looking at the valuation piece and we got Carrie involved. I mean, Tammy's again super nice, and she was like, "Hey, what do you think it's worth, Jordan?" I'm like, I don't want to answer that. I mean, although we could go down this trail, I said I want to do things the business way. I think we need to do evaluation. We need to do what's fair for you, for me, and let's agree to something. So that really did help too. Was bringing Carrie involved, which is where we met, and allowing you to kind of look at our business and do what made the most sense for not only myself but obviously for Tammy and her future success.
Yeah, you got to create a win-win-win. There's no someone comes out a winner, someone comes out a loser. And I think that was one of the beauties of working with you all is you both understood that. Like, she wants to get what her agency's worth, but she also wants to set you up for success. And you want her to get what it's worth, but you also want to make a good business decision for your family. So when that is the case, it makes it really easy to work with people. When it's not, when that's out of balance, that becomes a big, big challenge. So I think the financial part in my world is like the easy part. The numbers don't lie. The cash flow works. And you're right. I love that the trivia question is what it was, because that is something that you would know. But the letting go of decisions, hiring, deciding to be part of a network or not part of a network, deciding what the brand's going to be, how you're going to grow, all those things are, sometimes an exiting owner struggles to let go of those decisions. And especially if they stay and work in the agency beyond ownership. Tell me how that has gone and how that you navigated all of that, or is it still something you're navigating? That's okay too.
Yeah, I don't think we're currently navigating it. And again, going back to the beginning, what I tried to do was not interfere with what was working.
Sure.
Because there's no point. I think the main thing was identifying, like, where can I show the most value and where can I maybe offer some areas of improvement. So number one, just from a straight employee standpoint, was growing the company, getting carriers on board. And so Tammy knew that kind of automatically coming in as the only salesperson on the team and wanting to grow commercial, that she cut me loose immediately. Like, I just literally, and how I found the big eye just quickly, I was so convicted. I landed my first $100,000 account within a year. Scared me to death, because I'm like, I better know what I'm talking about. Had a lot of conviction with that. And so I just literally Googled like certifications, and I found the CIC. So I called the big eye and realized that they don't offer the CIC, but I happened to talk to a lady named Betsy Olson, who is still a huge part of where we are today. She said, "Hey, why don't you come up to this fall conference?" I'm like, sure. Showed up, and small world, find out that Albie Knight is now the CEO of IIA-NC. He was my professor in college, and I never connected the dots. And I will say this is true. Like, it was one of the most fun classes I've ever taken. It was risk management, and that guy, you talk about passion.
Oh,
I was sitting through that course, didn't know how to spell insurance really, but he was so fun. Like, whatever this guy's doing, I wanted to do, but I never explored further than in the insurance at the time. But anyway, joined the big eye, and I was like, okay, no wonder Albie was so passionate about insurance in the industry.
You're like, I get it now.
I get it. So so Tammy let me loose, and I just went and shook hands at the expo and got some carriers to come in. And, the famous question that any carrier is going to ask you immediately is going to be, what's your book size? And I immediately looked at every carrier in the face, and I'm like, look, you're not going to like what I say with that, but let me just have a chance to explain what we're trying to accomplish and what we're trying to do. And the ones that kind of saw that and believed in us gave us a chance and allowed us to grow. And obviously we joined Keystone in 2020. But yeah, I mean, Carey, I'll be honest, like Tammy just really allowed me to take that avenue freely. And yeah, I had to ask, permission on some things, but ultimately she's like, "Hey, Jordan, this is your lane. You want to grow it, do whatever you think necessary." And that was, quite frankly, awesome, which is why I never really forced buying her out fully, because even though I knew on paper I wasn't the owner, she allowed me to feel that way, which I think is huge. As somebody who knows you're going to come up, and like, to allow them to kind of go ahead and feel that is a confidence booster too.
I think that's key. We're talking about how nice Tammy is, but how smart she is, because if you can lead alongside someone and actually capitalize on her strengths, which is the foundation, the service, the care, the absolute core of the culture of the agency, and you innovating, thinking about how to sell differently, create commercial, like, that's a win-win all day long. And it's what you said, filling the gaps. If instead she had to exit for you to do that, then it's really difficult to do all of those things plus the stuff you're trying to do. Makes it very, very hard. So while I agree with you, I think Tammy's one of the nicest people I'll ever meet in my lifetime. She's also a very, very smart person, and she operates with grace. There's no two ways around that. You both do. You operate with great grace, which is, I think it's very needed for an internal transition.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I mean, I kind of jokingly say this, but when the time came to purchase the company in full, I said, Tammy, I'm going to need you to sign a 5-year contract too, because you're not going anywhere. I cannot do this without you, because again, I mean, the strength that her father created and the strength that she just naturally embedded with her is just the service. I mean, it's unbelievable what kind of service that our team has because of, her father and Tammy, working it for 25 years. I mean, I wouldn't know what to do if she wasn't here. So I jokingly say that, but I'm like, I need you here for a minimum of 5 years.
Yeah. So Jordan, if you were going to give advice to someone who wants to be a successor, they see the opportunity and they also know that the difference between an external and an internal transition is massive.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give to them? Like where would you tell them to start? And what key things would you tell them to do in order to make that happen? Be that bull in the china closet in their agency.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is continue to prove yourself and work hard. I mean, that's got to be first and foremost. I mean, do your job well. Whatever that job is today, do it well. And I would think the second thing is just be honest with whoever you're, looking to acquire and learn from them. Don't try to go and necessarily change everything. I mean, clearly the agency's there for a reason. It's successful for a reason. So figure out what is good, what things have gone well to get the company to that point, and be a sponge. I mean, to this day, I mean, I tell people all the time, like, I want to be a big yellow sponge that's dipped in water and absorbs as much as I possibly can at every phase of my life. And especially while you're trying to work toward a goal of owning a company, I mean, that's the most critical time to learn from the people that are running it. And so, yeah, I mean, those would be my two biggest pieces of advice.
Is there any reflection that you had, like, man, if I had it to do over, I wouldn't do this? Is there any lessons learned? Now I'm really stumping you. But sometimes you learn the most in the things that are mistakes, like, listen, not everything is a straight line. So sometimes that's where the biggest insights are, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it would be not trying to do too much at one time. We had a very fortunate kind of runway, but yeah, trying to do too much at one time and trying to think that you can, try to accomplish something in a year when really it's 5 years, and not looking at everything that needs to be done today, but like slowly phase that in. And because that was hard at first. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm already, it sounds crazy to say, but I was like, I'm already 29, I got times, which is crazy, but I did catch myself doing that at times. And, you almost need to enjoy the moment, I guess,
Yeah. I was thinking about that advice. Yeah. I was thinking about that advice and I'm not sure that I want my team to hear this podcast to say, not try and do everything all at once. Maybe I should not let them listen to this podcast right now, because I too suffer from I see something, I want to do it, and then I want to do 17 other things. And, one in isolation sounds like a great idea. All 17, maybe not so much. So I'm with you. Exactly. But pace for someone just starting and pace for someone who has the experience in time are very different. That's why you together make a great, great team. She can help you with pace. She can help you with context. She can help you with, and she can also say, go, like you do this. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but at least we tried. Yeah. So I love it. I do really love your story. I will tell you that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate that. But I mean, I guess another way to put it would be, don't feel like you have to do everything. Because I've recently read a book called Traction. It's a really good book, and it's we're a little smaller right now, but at some point I'd like to implement it. But it in essence, it talks about putting the right people in the right seat. And I think a lot of owners or soon to be owners feel like they have to do everything, and really that could hurt you. And it's trusting the people you have on your team to help carry the load. And so that was the biggest struggle for me, is trusting that, like put the right people in the right seat, trust everybody's role within the company, because they're all here to help us, achieve our goals.
What is so you've had a crazy last 4 years, I think ish. So what's next? Yeah. What's this year going to be like for you guys?
Yeah, that's another thing I kind of joked with Tammy about, because she went from captive to independent, and that whole year, but this is before I joined, they had to save a book roll. I mean, there was no guaranteed match. A carrier was like, we'll match the home and not the auto. So they spent a full year trying to save the book of business they had going to independent. And then bam, here comes daggum Jordan Piland. Didn't know what I was getting into. And it's like every year there's always been, something. But for this next transition, it's really, you got to spend money to make money as a business owner. And I will say we've hired 3 people in a month span back in November. So we we went from 1 producer, and now we have a team of 4 producers. And we have an account manager. So we have 9 total employees within the firm. So to answer your question, for 2025, I have had to kind of reevaluate what my goals are personally. And my goal for 25 is to see every one of our producers hit their target. And so nice. I am dedicated in 25 to really solidify our sales team, get policies and procedures, workflows, all of that stuff done right, give them as much tools and resources as possible to hit their goal. Because quite frankly, I'm not going to be satisfied if I hit my goal and no one else does. I'm going to be satisfied if our producers hit their goal, our account managers hit their goal. That's going to be way better, way more fun celebrating than just me hitting a goal, which kind of goes back to why I wanted to be a business owner for a long time, because it's not just about me hitting my number.
Yeah, it's spoken like a true business owner, like a CEO, instead of an independent, producer, not independent producer, but a producer who is good at selling. That's the CEO mindset. So awesome. I love to hear that. I got so swept up in listening to the story. My mom had to message me like, are you going to ask a question? I was like, oh, I forgot that I'm on this podcast, not just listening to it. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. This was, I'm so glad that you started the podcast just by saying how much you loved it, because you guys do have a great story, and I'm rooting for you guys. Hope it all works out.
For sure.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't want to end the story without saying again how big of an impact the industry as a whole has had on me personally. I've had some incredible mentors take me on from day one. I mean, one of the first things I did was try to find people who have been doing this a long time. That's what I did at IBM. And I was like, who has done this a long time? Who's doing it right? And so Betsy Olson was able to introduce me to, I mean, I'll tell you, Mike Iverson was one of the key people who looked at me and was like, I mean, I was I was green as it could be. And he still took me to breakfast and challenged me and took me in under his wing when he didn't have to. And John Barber, I mean, the whole Big I team was a pivotal point in my career. And then that led us to Keystone. I mean, Keystone would not have considered us if I'd have just called them off the street. I mean, I think we're probably the smallest firm they've ever taken on. And so Betsy Olson again was like, hey, called the Keystone guys and said, hey, you need to meet Jordan. And I was very thankful for that because, again, it wouldn't have worked on my own. And so once I joined Keystone, their sales team, Sheldon's been great. Robert Sutter has been amazing. He has a really good sales class that he allows you to kind of think differently. So, and then the other thing with Keystone that's nice is we can't compete, but I've been able to build some awesome relationships with other business owners. And I pick up the phone and call them all the time asking, hey, when you're hiring somebody, what do you do? When you're looking at producers and commission splits, and just getting that intellectual capital has been priceless.
Well, big shout out to IAG.
Yeah,
Love to hear
no doubt.
that.
Yeah.
And I met Carey
no
through
doubt.
that. So and Carey, seriously, it's not because Carey's been a huge part too and super supportive. It made the acquisition process easy because she, and Carey, I'm sure you do this with everybody, but you made us feel like family. It wasn't just like a client. Like we built we've been on a walk on the beach. So we
have been on a walk on the beach. Yeah,
we've
sure.
built a good relationship, and that's. But I want my clients to feel the same way, and so that's what attracts me to people like your company is because I want my clients to feel the exact same way when they're dealing with us.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to work with you both. And honestly, I genuinely care how this works out for everyone involved. So it is, like you're passionate about what you do. I'm equally passionate about what I do because it's a big deal. This is a big deal. This is not a little thing you did in your life. And it's definitely not a little thing that Tammy's doing in her life. It's a big decision. And it's an honor to be a part of it, honestly. So, well, I love that you were willing to share your story. I know that it's going to help people. And I also think it's really important for if you're in an agency and you haven't raised your hand and talked about it, communication is the key. Like you got to start and you got to be okay if the answer isn't what you want it to be. But you also need to be persistent and you need to, I love how you put it, you got to do the work. Like you can't just want something, you've got to actually make it happen. And that's by being the whole package, not a single contributor, but the entire package. So I love that you shared your story. I know that it's not the easiest thing to do in the world and I appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you on that beach, my friend.
That's right. A few months away.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Lindsay, it was nice to meet you.
You too. You too. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Insurance Refocused podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review so you'll never miss us. Want to learn more about how Agency Focus can help you grow your agency? Head to agency-focus.com or email Carey directly at carey@agency-focus.com. If you need to get in touch with me, feel free to shoot me an email at lindsay@agency-focus.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.